had that dream again. My small business needs to hire, but I don't use LinkedIn, and I hire an energy vampire. But also, they're a literal vampire. And suddenly my team is spending all their time sharpening wooden stakes and buying bulk silver and rehearsing ancient chants, and then I wake up.
Don't let hiring nightmares ruin your dreams. LinkedIn Jobs' new AI assistant takes insights from over 1 billion professionals to create a short list of the best fits for you. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/quality. Start hiring today with LinkedIn.
Welcome to the 1905 podcast. Each week, Joe and I bring you our unfiltered takes on the highs, the lows, and everything in between, following the blues from Gate 13 of the Matthew Harding Stand. Let's hit the notes.
Jesus wept. What have I just watched? From the absolute idiocy and just plain brain-dead first half performance to a victory I don't think any Chelsea fan would have even give you a 1% chance of. We were so awful in the first half, and I have said that this season about Chelsea, but I'm not telling. When I tell you, I think I wanted to rip my eyes out and basically stand on them, because let's go through it very, very quickly. The changes, there was too many changes. I said in my voice note before the game, I could see Hato playing, being that it's West Ham, they're sort of in a relegation zone, but they are a London, not rival, but they're certainly a London club. It's a derby game. They always come to the Bridge, and even though they've got a fairly poor record, they always give us a game. They always play well against us, I think, at the Bridge. And Cucurella sort of had to start for me, the experience. And you bring Hato on when you've got business done and maybe you're a goal or two up with a few minutes to go, just to kind of keep him entertained, keep him kind of focused on the first team. But I think it was probably a step too far of him this afternoon. Garnacho got his start. I did say I would like to see him instead of Neto. My word, Garnacho was poor today. I mean, he was isolated against Wan-Bissaka. Wan-Bissaka is a sort of defender that in one-on-one foot race and a one-on-one situation, he's very good, actually, Wan-Bissaka. He's not a bad player. But we just couldn't get at him. We had no overlapping runs. Obviously, Hato's not that sort of defender at the moment. He hasn't got the experience of Cucurella. And once we started getting those 2v1 situations, Chelsea was so dangerous. Obviously, the two centre-halves had to change because it's a Chelsea Football Club and we can't just make one change or no changes. Both centre-backs from the game against Napoli came out, and we had another pairing of Trevor Badiashile. I'm sorry, it's too many changes every fucking week, and it's driving me mad. And to be fair, Badiashile he is what I've been saying since we signed him. He's bang average, not good enough, and unfortunately, he's got to go in the summer, if not before. Liam Delap started up front instead of João Pedro. And look, I do realise that they can't play every single game. They just can't, all right? I know they're not robots, but he's in such a good vein of form, João Pedro. And do you know what? I think Liam Delap is possibly the weakest number 9 since Steve Sidwell. And I'm being kind. He is just a bag of shit. What have we signed? What's wrong with him? He's so slow. He's driving me up the wall how poor he is. Because Ipswich, you never saw any of this. When we signed him, I was so pleased. Every club in the fucking Premier League wanted him. Man City wanted him back. And all of a sudden, it looked like he couldn't play in the Championship. He's got to improve. And he played a full 90 today, but bloody hell, he was poor. And that B team, and I'm going to call it the B team, I don't really care, that pretty much started the first half. And I know there's obviously experienced players like Palmer and Caicedo, Enzo, etc. in there, but the ones that keep getting changed in and out, there's a bloody reason why. And they're just not good enough. They're just not good enough. And when we made those changes at half-time, of course, we're going to be pleased to see who's gone off and who's come on. But at the same time, 2-0 down. And the booing from the home fans, I mean, it was just deafening. And do you know what, rightly so? Chelsea was so bad today in that first half. And the second half, for a half an hour period, okay, well, West Ham had one or two little minor chances, sort of between the 45th and the 50th minute. But once we sort of weathered that storm. Chelsea played fantastically well, that half an hour. And you've got to give credit to Rosenior for going for it. There'll be those that say that we shouldn't have been in that situation to start with, but do you know what? Football's football, and it bloody happens. I mentioned Somerville, I mentioned Bowen in the build-up to the game. They're always going to be dangerous players. And I think actually Somerville's a very good player. I think his speed and his finish for their West Ham second goal was outstanding, but we just never got to grips with them. And so those changes just transformed us. I mean, we were wonderful, like bloody brilliant. Everybody had pep in their step. And that goal that we scored through João Pedro, we just needed it. It was a huge lift. And again, it's Pedro that gets it, the man in form. And you're just thinking, we need a second. Well, obviously, we need a second, clearly, Joe. But you're thinking to yourself, we must go and get something out of this game, because all the momentum that we had going into the game was just going to, we'd have hit rock bottom. You know, if we do go out of the cup against Arsenal on Tuesday night, which, by the way, I give us a good fighting chance, I think we go into the Arsenal game with a bit flat. I think now, with that goal for João Pedro to make it 2-1, and then obviously Cucurella scoring to make it 2-2, you're thinking, okay, all right, at the very least, I'm still disappointed. I'd have been peed off, rotten with a draw against West Ham at home, because I know how poor they can be. Even though they've turned their form around slightly in the last few weeks, it still would have felt like a kick in the teeth. But that winner at the end, because we were going nowhere, West Ham suddenly got a foothold back in the game after the second goal that Chelsea scored. And you're going, right, how are we going to break them down? We're playing on the edge of the box. They had 2 banks of 5 and a goalkeeper, and they were not moving. And Chelsea went from the right to the left, to the middle, to the right, to the left, to the middle, and we couldn't get in their box. We didn't know what to do. And I thought, I'll be honest with you, big presence. Like the lap, we would throw a few more balls into the box, but there doesn't seem to be any confidence in the fullbacks or the wingers to really put it in there for him. And we just kept recycling possession. And all of a sudden, Palmer picked it up. We've had a lovely little 1-2. João Pedro, fantastic ball across. And obviously Enzo Fernandez, he's done it so often. It's very Frank Lampard-esque. Arriving late, slight scuffy, bouncy one into the bottom corner. And how often do the scuffy, bouncy ones always go in? He could have hit that absolutely pure. And I can guarantee you it's the bar. Ariella makes a great save. The fact that he slightly hit it into the turf, it took the speed out of the ball. Ariella had already made his dive. It goes past him, and oh my goodness, me and the kids, and the wife, to be fair, have just lifted the absolute roof off my house. That was, I can't say the comeback of all comebacks, can I? But do you know what? That meant something to me tonight. That meant something to my family, my kids. That was a really, really important goal. And I think that Liam Rosenior, rightly, because we can all make mistakes, we can all pick a team that ends up being not the right one, let's just say that. But it's how can you get yourself out of it? I did have a slight dig at Enzo Maresca when he was in charge, and I said that you can't keep picking the wrong team and hoping that the substitutes are going to come and win it for you. You can't keep doing that. And I think between Liam Rosenior, Callum McFarlane, the sporting directors, the ownership, who bloody knows, there's definitely an influence. I don't care what anybody says. There is definitely an influence for Rosenior to play all these players, because I think this is why Enzo Maresca left. And I'm being brutally honest. I think Maresca was just not having it anymore. And because Rosenior's young and he's kind of impressionable, and you can he probably feels as though this is a job too big for him. So maybe not, he doesn't think that, but the job is really, looking at his CV, you can say to him, we want this to happen and we want that to happen, and this is non-negotiable. I feel as though you're seeing all these changes all the time is because the hierarchy are getting involved. But I think the sooner they get their heads around that making 5 changes every single match doesn't affect the team in a negative way, then Chelsea are going to be a much better side going forward. If they can limit that to 1 or 2 changes a week, if that, sometimes go with the same team that won the last game, you haven't lost it, so keep going and winning it, type of mentality, then I think we're going to be all the better for it. But to be frank tonight, I don't really care. I don't really care, because Chelsea have come back from the absolute dead, because it wasn't like we were 2-0 down, but we were playing well and we were in that game. We could have been 3-0 down in the 45th minute when they had a sniff of a penalty and they had 1 or 2 chances, and you're going, yeah, West Ham all over us. And to have come back from that first half performance to not only get something from the game, to actually win the game, I think these Chelsea players are going to be feeling bulletproof, quite frankly. There's going to be an element of, do you know what, we can beat anybody. And I know you might say it's only West Ham at home. It's just the way they've done it. As a football player, as any sports person will tell you in any sport, that feeling, that last minute winner feeling, or, you know, if you're an Olympic medalist and you win your last run, your last ski run, and you can pip your opponent by a tenth of a second, that feeling is just unbreakable. And I think the bond, just very, very quickly, the bond that they would have garnered from the ruckus that happened at the end of the game, when João Pedro and Cucurella, and I think there's Fafana is in there, Palmer comes in, they all stood up for each other. But you know what? Not one of them was an absolute palm. Not one of them raised a hand. I don't know if anybody noticed that. Palmer could have easily lashed out. Pedro could have easily lashed out. But everybody kept their hands down. And nobody got a bloody red card, because we could have ended up there with Palmer slapping someone or João Pedro slapping someone and both getting red cards. And you'd be sitting there going, great win, but we've now lost these 2 players for the next 3 matches for violent conduct. As it turns out, Tobido gets his marching orders with a red card, because he obviously grabs João Pedro around by the neck and pushes him quite forcefully back. And I think another step backwards, and Pedro might have ended up in the hoardings. But that was, I don't know if that's I say by design, in the heat of the moment, anything can happen. But you feel as though that sort of stuff has maybe been talked about. And they did not make an absolute Horlicks of it. They kept their hands in their pockets, as it were, and they made sure that West Ham were doing all the pushing, all the shoving. And Chelsea were doing that thing where they were just kind of defending themselves. And it would have felt really good to have won. But to have lost Cole Palmer for 3 weeks, or João Pedro for 3 weeks, would have felt like a loss. So, yeah, I'm really, really, really pleased that the team somehow come from behind tonight. From literally the depths of hell there, they have summoned something. I don't know where from. But that's the sort of result that when we play against Arsenal the week and then Wolves the week after, you just never know. And this is slowly becoming a nice little run for Rosenior. He's going to lose matches, of course. We know that over the course of the season, but it's been a brilliant start now. And however you win these matches, by hook or by crook, the Premier League is so hard to get 3 points. And at the moment, he's making it look like child's play. So long may it continue. And Chris, I will come back with a slightly more measurable response tomorrow. But I'm sure you're like me, absolutely bouncing.
Joe, no need to apologise for the excitement and enthusiasm. That's what the podcast is all about, I think. And I really enjoyed listening to that. I'm sure everyone else did as well. I'm sure the Kevin household was going mad like we all were when that goal went in. I want to talk about Liam Rosenior, I think. I want to take you back to something he said pretty consistently, actually, when he joined the club, when he was in his interviews. I've watched so many of his interviews and press conferences now. I've binged his content, I would say. But it really stood out to me, one particular thing. We were all, and I think me on the podcast as much as anyone really, were talking about how he's going to set up tactically. He got asked so many times, will you play a back 3 like he did at Strasbourg? We were watching all these clips and tactical breakdowns about how he used the goalkeeper in the build-up and Sanchez and how the wingers fit into the system, all this kind of stuff. But in the interviews, he was pretty pointed in saying, look, we can talk about tactics and systems all day long, and of course they're important, but they're not the most important thing. The most important thing is work rate, character, personality, the players working for each other and working for the fans. I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but he talked so much about that. And I think if there's one thing that we've seen from Liam Rosenior's Chelsea so far, and it's very, very early days, it is that he has got these players showing a bit of character and fight much more than we saw under Maresca. And particularly with one particular part of our game, we saw under Maresca enough times that when we were good, Chelsea were very good. But when we were bad, and when the game started to go the wrong way for us, we would be really, really bad. It was almost like once you kind of had this feeling, didn't you, watching Chelsea under Maresca, that it was all about getting the first goal and making sure that we stayed in the game. And there's so many times where, look at something like Leeds away earlier in the season, you start badly and it feels like, as soon as the game is starting to go away from us, there's no real reply from us. Game early in the season, something like Brighton at home, as soon as they equalise, you're like, oh no, I'm not sure we've got the character to get ourselves back into this. Whereas I think under Rosenior's Chelsea so far, what you've seen is a resilience. And however he's doing it, he's talked about having lots of one-on-one meetings with players, lots of team meetings. I think that's the part of his focus that you can see the most, that he's like, look, you're already good players. I think he's actually spoken pretty complimentary, actually, of how Maresca set them up tactically. And he kind of said, there wasn't a lot wrong, but this is the stuff, the personality and character stuff that we can improve. And I think you're really seeing it. I mean, there's recency bias here, of course, because, the last two games, you're 2-1 down at half-time in Napoli. To go and win like we did in the second half was absolutely huge. And then obviously to do what we did, recording this on Sunday, so to do what we did last night from 2-0 down, and as Joe said, 2-0 down, and let's face it, couldn't have really been playing any worse in that first half. And Joe rightly says it, we were very lucky not to be 3-0 down by the time we kind of got ourselves back into the game. But you had that feeling about us now, didn't you, that once we did score, that there was belief and character, and obviously the crowd, once we got back in, was great. And that's what being at Stamford Bridge is all about, because nights like that in front of the Matthew Harding is pretty special, and it almost does feel like you're sort of sucking the ball towards the goal in a way. That said, by the way, I watched the highlights back this morning, and that chance that West Ham had at the end just before we scored, 89 minutes on the clock, puts it wide and over from 3 or 4 yards, was pretty mad, wasn't it? But you need sometimes things to go your way, and that one went our way, and what character we showed. But yeah, I'm just really pleased for Rosenior. I thought I'd like him. I'm really liking what I'm seeing. I also really liked the fact that the way he handles himself in the press. There was a great question. They were asking him about the fans booing at half-time, and for those who haven't heard it, he said, if I'd been there, I would have been booing as well. I would have been booing along with them. And I thought, that is, what a great way to handle it and to show that you get it and you get the feeling of the fans. And he pointedly called out the fans in the second half, and he said, in the second half, the Chelsea fans were magnificent and really drove the team on. And I just think he's getting a lot right, and it's been a very, very good start, hasn't it, for him? Let's pick out a few of the individuals. Joe's talked about them. I'm going to just add a little bit on top, I think. We could pick with Garnacho. I messaged a couple of mates who are watching it, who are a Palace and a Spurs fan, going, "Oh, Garnacho's not having a good game, is he?" They said to me, and I replied back and I said, with Garnacho, there's no middle ground. I don't know if you guys agree, but it feels like he's either great or horrendous. And when he's great, he can be really good. He gets at his fullback. You always think of it as an end product there, or get you goals and assists, and really his numbers say that. But when he's bad, God, he's bad. And that was one of those yesterday where you looked at it and thought, oh, every time he seems to be getting the ball, he's giving it away. And fair play to Rosenior for once again making the tough calls early and half-time, making, the 3 changes that he did, because I think Joe's right. As soon as the team sheet came out, you're thinking he's made too many changes and he has to learn from this. And we really hope it isn't too much influence from upstairs. But yeah, it worries you, doesn't it? So when you see these kind of lineups come out, and you just think we're making it harder than we need to for ourselves. But half-time, he got everything right and we just looked so much better. I've got to call out Wes Fofana for that cross. I think after the Napoli game as well, I said, I'm a bit worried about Fofana, about his legs going a little bit. Is he still the player that we thought we were buying? I'm not sure yet defensively, but that was brilliant play. The pace that he showed carrying the ball, and then that ball he put in, it was De Bruyne-esque, wasn't it? It was absolutely exquisite, asking to be scored. And João Pedro, he's just on that little run that you sometimes get as a player where it doesn't even connect brilliantly with it, but it's perfect and hits the side of his head and goes in and gets Chelsea right back in the game. It was brilliant from Fofana. Really, really good. Badiashile, he's a liability, isn't he? And he has been consistently playing for Chelsea. I live in hope that the strong rumour is that we're going to be bringing back Sarr from Strasbourg, who obviously Liam Rosenior knows very well. We've only seen a little bit of him in a Chelsea shirt. I think he played, I think, half an hour or something in the Club World Cup. But Anselmino is going to Strasbourg. I think by all accounts, Sarr will be coming in. And yeah, the fact that Rosenior knows him, the fact that clearly Rosenior has had a look at the centre backs and said, no, we need to strengthen this area. We're also very interested in this Jacquet still. My sense based on this movement that's happening is that maybe Jacquet will be brought in, maybe bought now but for the summer, because the Rennes don't want to let him go. But the fact that we are making moves in that area of the pitch where we know as Chelsea fans that there are too many players there that aren't good enough, and we know who they are. We know it's Badiashile, we know it's Tosin, and we know that whilst they might have one or two good games and they might almost trick you to go, oh no, they're all right actually, then there's only you 5 minutes away from a disaster and a mistake. And even though Badiashile wasn't necessarily at fault for either of the goals directly, he gives the opposition a chance by little moments where he's sloppy on the ball and slow and gives things away. And I actually felt a little bit for Hato, who I think was rightly hooked at half time because they were getting in so much on that left hand side. But if you are bringing in a Hato, you want a Chalobah alongside him, don't you? You want someone who's going to help talk him through the game and protect him a little bit. And I think he got hung out to dry a little bit with Badiashile on one side and obviously Garnacho having the game that he was in front of him. But yeah, credit to Rosenior for doing what he did, making the changes, and then the character he showed. And like Joe says, these sort of performances just give the team belief, don't they? They give us belief. We go into the game against Arsenal on Tuesday, and you just have this feeling now that we'll go there and have a go. Like, I don't think I can see us scoring. I can see us scoring there, and then it becomes like, can we keep Arsenal's set pieces out when they'll put fucking 15 players in the goal line and try and squeeze the ball in this horrible style of play that they have. But if we can go there and be strong and play to our very best, who knows? Who knows? There's certainly very, very strong favourites, but I fancy us to go there and have a proper go. And yeah, I want to actually mention Delap as well, because Joe's right. He just doesn't look the player that we saw at Ipswich. You know, we saw him firsthand playing against Chelsea, and he was electric. He was brilliant. Even when he first came into the Chelsea side in the Club World Cup and early in the season, I just thought he looked a lot sharper. And I don't know whether, I mean, it was clearly he's coming back from the injury, but he's been back a while now. He doesn't look quick to me, like Joe said. He looks sluggish. It's almost like he's carrying a couple of extra pounds. Not that he looks like it, but there's just something about him. He hasn't got that movement right, where really you want him stretching teams constantly and being a different sort of threat. What I will say is that I'd have probably hooked him at half time yesterday. He didn't. He kept him on the pitch, and maybe that will do him the world of good to have played 90 minutes, to have been part of the comeback. Obviously, he was involved with the Cucurella goal, being there on the goal line. So maybe at least he's had 90 and he feels part of the group and part of that. But yeah, we need to see a hell of a lot more from him. I said it before, but it's a big few months for him, I think, in a Chelsea shirt in his career, because they will not muck around, I don't think, in the summer if he hasn't improved. But yeah, finish on a positive. It was just a great night, wasn't it? A really, really enjoyable game. And, you know, I said about Maresca leaving, football is an entertainment business. It's meant to be fun to watch your team play. And we've been treated, haven't we, in the last week to a few really, really enjoyable games. We've scored 3 goals, 3 games running. Defensively, not quite where we want to be, let's face it. But do you know what? I'd rather watch this sort of football time and time again than I would some of the stuff that we've been served up under Maresca, where it would just feel a bit turgid. If we can sort ourselves out at the back, then yeah, it could be quite an interesting second half of the season.
Good morning. Waking up after the night before is rather nice today, I have to say. I've been starved, and I think this is where I'd like to start my voice note today, is something that Chris said, or has been saying to me. Forgive me, because I can't remember if he said it in his voice note or not now, but we've been sort of talking about this off pod as well, about it's that feeling of the game being exciting. Now, I think everybody who's got eyes would suggest that Chelsea's performance in the first half yesterday was as bad as it can possibly get. However, no one minds that if you know you're going to get a response like you got in the second half. Now, clearly no one wants to play as bad as that, like they did in the first half yesterday, but the way in which they were able to turn it around and galvanise themselves, and Chris mentioned there, the team sticking together, wanting to win, doing it for the manager, doing it for themselves, making sure the supporters got value for money there today. And I just think that I've been so starved of this type of football for so long that I just don't know. I didn't know how to react to this thunderous football that we've been playing under Maresca. And to be fair, even under Rosenior, it's not been great at times at the very beginning. And I get the sense in my own self, there was a sense of relief that we were able to pull that off yesterday, because I don't think under Enzo Maresca we get some of these results that we've had. Now, I'm going to go back on a few results, and it's all up for debate, and you can never really tell in game what may or may not have happened. But just sensing how we were playing and how the team was operating under Enzo Maresca, I thought I'd go back on some of these matches that we played already and decide if we would have won them or not. I'll go back to Charlton. I think Maresca negotiates Charlton with a win, but I don't think we win 5-1. I think it's drab. I think Brentford, I think the way Brentford played on the day, I think we lose. I don't see us beating Brentford. I think that's going to be a tricky game for us. We were playing poorly, but I think under Rosenior, the team stuck together. It wasn't pretty at times, but they managed to get a result. I think Chelsea lose under Maresca. I think the similar story happens against Crystal Palace. I think we probably play, as silly as it sounds, Buddy Shield makes that same mistake against Palace when Maresca's in charge. I think they score. Like sometimes managers just have, it's not him doing anything in particular. It's just that little bit of magic, a little bit of luck that you need sometimes in football. I think that under Enzo Maresca, Palace score against us there, and they'd probably win. I think that Maresca negotiates Paphos with a victory, but strangely, I think he maybe gets a result against Arsenal, whether it be a draw or a victory. I think somehow he probably wins that game, just because he had a knack in those big games against big teams of pulling off a strange result. And I think that maybe he negotiates a better result than a 3-2 loss that Liam Rosenior had. And I think unquestionably Chelsea play West Ham yesterday, and under Enzo Maresca, there is not a cat in hell's chance that we come back and win 3-2. Not even a glimmer of hope at half-time. Now, of course, Maresca might have played a different team. He may well have played a different strategy. He may have well have played a different tactical approach in all of those matches. So that is not having a knock on Maresca. This is just sort of basing it on if the teams lined up as they were and came out like for like. I think we get some negative results, and I think that Chelsea would be staring down the barrel of some horrendous league position right now, quite frankly. And I know That's not necessarily a true fact or a true state of affairs or what might have happened, but I do believe that Liam Rosenior, whatever you may give him, I think he has got into a few of them. And I do see them, as Chris mentioned there, I do see them playing for each other. And I have said this since, well, Chris will tell you this, since he's met me. It is not all about if you play a 4-3-3, a 4-4-2-1, what it is literally sometimes just, can we as a group work hard together? When there's a scrap going on, can we stick up for each other? We're losing a game. Can we galvanise ourselves to get back into the match by hook or by crook, whether that be by playing amazing football, or sometimes, you know what, let's just get it in the box 15 times and see what happens. Get a knockdown, get a loose ball. Chelsea did that for years. We were very, very good at set pieces. Offensively, we scored lots and lots of goals with Terry and Ballack and Essien, etc. Carvalho, Gallas. They would all come up and nick goals. And I feel as though, even though we haven't necessarily solved that problem as of yet, just winning a little bit ugly sometimes is not. It's not bad for the soul. I'll be honest with you. It's not bad for the soul. I felt like even though Chelsea were poor yesterday, for large parts of that game, the 30 minutes after the break have really given me a little bit of hope. Not that I can predict them to finish in a certain position or win a trophy or anything like that, but it's just given me a little bit of hope for the rest of the season, and maybe beyond that we might have just a little bit of something. The real test for Liam Rosenior will become when he has a slightly dodgy run of games, where there's a few draws, a few losses, maybe some teams that you should beat and you don't. Or even if it's the big teams, where maybe we've seen this flip before, where managers only ever beat the big teams and lose to all the small teams, and then sometimes they beat all the small teams and lose to all the big teams. There has to be some level of consistency now within this Chelsea group, and I hope that under Liam Rosenior, we've now started to see a pattern where we are starting to knock off some of these sides that are, in footballing terms, way below us. Now, the defence. We've been saying for a long, long time about the defence, and I think we're now in last chance saloon for the remainder of the season as to what happens between now and the end of the season, because the transfer window shuts tomorrow, and I'm getting a little bit itchy feet because I'm not seeing a lot of movement in terms of players coming in. Now, I don't expect us to spend millions and millions of pounds, but obviously the talk is that Sarr is likely to come back, and the transfer for Xhaka has still not gone away completely. And I just feel that if we do not improve and add a good, solid body in there right now, it could affect what happens between now and the end of the year. Because the two centre-backs, whoever we play, and look, I'm going to call them all out. Fofana, Trev, Badiashile, Tosin, maybe not Achimpong, because that's maybe a little unfair because he hasn't played that much and he's a very young man. But the other ones, and Chris was sort of being reasonably kind the other day when he said that he feels as though Trev is possibly like a third and a fourth choice. I completely agree. And I think because Trev's come through the Cobham Academy and he came back from Crystal Palace, we shipped him off to Palace and with a bit of a "you're not good enough for us" type attitude, and then we called him back. People were very, very much looking at Trev as if he's the saviour for Chelsea. He's not. And Trev is a good guy. He's a good, solid football player. But he's not going to win us major trophies. I'm sorry. And if we do win major trophies with Trev in the centre of the park on a regular basis, then I will come on here. I will be very apologetic. But I'm just saying it now. He is the sort of player you need to come in. And I think he did this under Tuchel, if my memory serves, where we had two solid centre-backs and he was the rotation one when you needed someone to come in and have a breather. He is fantastic at coming in for a couple of games here and there and being a leader, and being a, not a leader, sorry, but being a real consistent, straight up guy that you know what you're going to get from him. He'll give you real consistency. He'll give you hard work. He'll give everything for the badge. But then you just need him to go, right, Trev, cut the games there, mate. Well done. Now sit down for a little bit. Watch from the sidelines. Come on the substitute now and again. but we need to have two centre-halves that are starting week in, week out, because at the moment, the reason Chelsea concede so many goals and they concede so many poor goals is because the two centre-backs are simply not good enough on a regular basis. And I don't know how many times we need to say this on the podcast, but you don't change your centre-backs that often if you know you've got two really good ones. That's just simple facts. Ask anybody who's ever played football or scouted football or played football. You need to have two guys in the middle of the park there that are organised and dominant, powerful, do have good leadership. If you can get that as well, brilliant. Good aerially, good organisational skills. And frankly, the proof's been in the pudding. We haven't had it for a long, long time. And that's an area of the field that if Sarr comes home from Strasbourg this weekend and possibly we get another one, then I think that's a really, really positive move. And it sort of says that even though I'm not entirely sure about Jeremy Jacquet as of yet, because I've not seen him play before, I think it's a move of intelligence and they're looking to solve a problem. And if Rosenior's played with Sarr and obviously had Sarr with him, he knows what he's going to get from him. He knows what his ability is and what his strengths are because he's had him as a player already. And the idea that I am now certainly looking forward to seeing what happens against Arsenal on Tuesday night, it has given me that real desire to go and watch Chelsea again. And look, we may not get the right result. We might get a beating, we might get a draw and go out. You just don't know. We might go there, get a 3-2 win and win on penalties. Who the hell knows? But I just think that at the very, very least, with that managerial change, I've noticed in a lot of Chelsea fans, they seem much more keen to go, much more keen to get involved in a conversation. I felt as though everybody I knew went completely flat and completely, they're just bored. There's just no other way of saying it. They were just terribly, terribly bored of watching the same person do the same thing, rinse and repeat every single week, even down to like substitutions were the same. And the timing of the minutes, the minutes of them, and you just kind of know that the strategy never changed. It was always pass, and often didn't go bloody anywhere. So I think, at least with Rosenior, he's given, I think, a lot of Chelsea fans that little bit of enjoyment back, because I'd been missing it hugely. And I must say, in that first half yesterday, as Chris rightly mentions about Rosenior calling out the team for being booed off at half time, yeah, him owning it and like you're saying that, do you know what? Yeah, I'd have booed as well. It just adds a little bit of personality to him. And we can kind of get on board with it and say, okay, he knows that was shit. He's not trying to pull the wool over our eyes and go, what are they booing for? What do they expect? It was absolutely rank bad. So I think that's just also going to do no harm when it comes to getting the fans on board. Just lastly for me today, I don't know what we're going to do against Arsenal. I really don't know. I'm not sure what team he's going to play. It's going to be a difficult game, whatever happens. They've had a few dodgy results of late, but they did win 4-0 yesterday and they're back in the hunt for the Premier League. And you kind of hope they've got one eye on the Premier League and we can sneak in under the radar and maybe get a result against them when they're not expecting it, or certainly smack them in the mouth and go up early and make them chase us. I think the plan, and what I'd be saying to Chelsea, is try not to give them too many corners. That's one. And don't give away too many cheap free kicks on the edge of the box. That's two. Because if you look at Arsenal's goals, they really don't score many from open play, or the Arsenal teams of old where they would rip you apart with Henry and Bergkamp and Robert Pires. It's all very much lump it in the box, hope for a knockdown and whack it in. Which, again, awful to watch. But at the moment, they've got enough physical, dominant players in the air to be a real problem for side. So we need to watch that. And I just want to call out a player who I think has been very good. And also, I think his passion and almost kid-like behaviour sometimes comes through when you watch him, and that's Enzo Fernandez. He has been a really, really good rock for Liam Rosenior. He's played him, I think, almost every game, if not every game. And the way he celebrated that goal yesterday, shirt off in the corner, and all his tattoos on display, giving it the big into the camera to the crowd in the 93rd minute or whatever it was. Oh God, it was magic. And even though I think Chris and I have both said we can't see Enzo Fernandez being here for like 10 years or something, what he gives us and what he seems to have is a real appreciation of the supporters. I think he hurts. When we're hurting, he hurts. And you saw that last year when we played Aston Villa away. And he was almost basically was in tears after we lost 3-2 when Jorgensen threw one through his legs in the last minute. You've seen it on more than one occasion where he gets visibly pissed off at poor results and results to make us look foolish. And I think that he, of all the players, to be fair, has been the one, I would say, out in the open leader that we've had. Reece leads with from a footballing perspective. I think Reece leads when we have a team meeting before a game and after a game in the huddle. I think Reece leads that very, very well. But I think on the field, I think Enzo Fernandez is definitely our general. And again, I do think he needs a rest. I do. And hopefully that'll come against Wolves and Arsenal on Tuesday night. But I think Enzo Fernandez has been a real fantastic player for us. And after a dodgy start, I think he's really come to the fore in recent weeks and months. And I think we need players like him in the side. I think if you took Enzo Fernandez's hunger out, sometimes he's a little bit slow on the ball and things now and again, but if you took away his desire and his will to win, I think it would hurt Chelsea a lot. So big props to him. And Chris, over to you, mate. What do you think of the result on Tuesday? Will we get one? And if we do, we're going to fucking Wembley.
There isn't actually a better feeling in being a football fan than a last-minute winner, is there? Like, genuinely, there is nothing quite like it. And weirdly, it's almost all the sweeter when you've played badly and suddenly turned it around. But yeah, I've watched back all the scenes after the game as well, and it was, they loved it. The fans, obviously, we all loved it, but the players absolutely loved it. You can see that. And I loved Liam Rosenior doing a big fist pump with those away fans. He did it in Napoli as well. It's this small stuff, but it makes a difference. It just makes a difference to have a connection between the manager and the players and obviously the fans. There's something building, isn't there? There is something building. Can you hear, by the way, in the desperation in Joe and I's voice notes to not say Malang Sarr? I think both of us not brave enough to say the first name right. It is Malang Sarr. It's Mamadou Sarr, isn't it? That's who we're bringing in. But I kept saying, I want to say Malang. But it isn't Malang Sarr. It is Mamadou Sarr who will be coming back. That's pretty much confirmed now. And yeah, I read some quotes. Liam Rosenior really, really talking him up last season at Strasbourg, saying that he has the ability to be an absolute top world-class centre-back. So I think that's positive. And like Joe says, if we're being greedy, if we could get a second in and completely rebuild what the centre-backs look like for the rest of the season, then it would certainly fill you with a bit more optimism. And also optimism is that in the pre-match conference, Liam Rosenior said that Levi Colwill is back running on the grass and didn't rule out him returning to play this season. So obviously he'll have a long way to go to be back to his best, but the fact that you could potentially get him back on the pitch would be absolutely huge, I think. I really liked one other thing that came up in Liam Rosenior's press conference. It was pre-match, actually, where he was asked by, I think it was Martin Tyler, about long throws. And Martin Tyler said that Maresca was pretty open in saying that he wasn't going to consider using a long throw as a way of breaking down opposition defences. Liam Rosenior, completely the opposite. And didn't say we would do it, but said, at the end of the day, I don't care how we score, it's about winning games. And if we can use a long throw, if we have players in the squad that can do it, I think he said he hasn't seen anyone throw it more than 10 yards yet, then he would not be against using it. And it's a small thing. It's very, very small. But again, it's what you want to hear. You want to hear pragmatism and a willingness to see what we can do. And surely Liam Delap must have a throw on him with his dad and those genes. And all right, we might think he He can't run at the moment, but he's got those big arms. I'd like to see him throw a ball. Come on. Arsenal then on Tuesday. It's huge for us. I think I'm kind of a little bit torn about what is a bigger game for us, whether it is bigger Arsenal or Wolves at the weekend. But I'm always going to say trophies are important. I think trophies is what it's about. And this Wembley record that we've had has been so painful in recent visits there that I would just love to see us finally put that right and do it. It would likely be against Man City, so it would be a bloody tough encounter if we do get there, but let's not worry about that. I imagine that we will go in full strength. I can't see him mucking around too much. I think there's a chance that if if Jorgensen is fit, I think there's a chance that Jorgensen might play in goal. But other than that, I would expect to see a very, very strong Chelsea side. And what does that mean? I think it's probably Reece James right back, Chalobah and Fofana, Cucurella. I think that you might see Andre Santos come back in, so potentially it's Santos and Caicedo with Enzo in front, and then you're looking at, do we get the chance to see Palmer and Estevao? Who knows? Estevao obviously missed the game for personal reasons going to Brazil. Probably you think it's maybe tight actually for him to play on Tuesday. So it's Palmer and one other, and then João Pedro's got to start, isn't he, with the form that he's on. So I think Chelsea will probably go full strength. From what we saw in the first leg, you'd imagine Arsenal will be much the same. And yeah, like we said earlier, let's just give them a game and hope that we can do something. And then all eyes back on the Premier League. The Premier League, there is starting to. I said, is there a gap opening up? A little bit between sort of Chelsea and the mid-table pack. It's still tight, don't get me wrong. We're on 40 points. If you look at sort of Fulham in 8th, they're on 34 at time of recording. It's still tight, don't get me wrong. I think the one big news that came out about the Premier League this week is the fact that because all of the English sides have done so well in Europe this year, it's basically guaranteed that top 5 will get Champions League again. So the way you are looking at the moment, I'd sort of say it's 5 from 6, isn't it? With Villa probably just ahead at the moment. You're kind of thinking, could they get dragged back into it? I think they could, but I'm going to assume that City and Arsenal will be 1 and 2. And then really it's probably it's 3 from 4, isn't it? With Villa, Man United, Chelsea and Liverpool. I think it will shake out and it's that way. And really with Man United, you're just wondering and hoping that this Carrick form is a short-term momentum rather than a long-term change, but time will tell. And Liverpool are a funny one. I watched Liverpool game against Newcastle and thought they were all over the place after half an hour, and Newcastle were very worthy to be ahead, and then obviously it went completely changed the other way, much like our game. So they're a very unpredictable team as well, like we all are at the moment. That's why we're all in this sort of chasing pack. But you kind of hope that Chelsea can keep this run going and just pull apart. I still would put a good argument together that Chelsea have the 3rd best squad in the league. So if we can get our act together, we could pull away and it would be comfortable, which would be a massive step forward to not be going into the last 1 or 2 games of the season desperately needing to win to make sure that we get top 4. But yeah, let's not get greedy. 1 step at a time, right? 1 step at a time. But let's see what Chelsea's going to be really interesting to see what Chelsea do in the final day of the transfer window. Mamadou Sarr is one of them. Will they do a second? I'd like to hope we might, but we'll wait and see. And we'll be back after that big game against Arsenal Wednesday to reflect and hopefully be looking forward to a trip to Wembley. Whatever happens, every little thing's going to be all right. See you next time. Those were the Chelsea notes for this week. If you enjoyed the podcast, do us a favour and share it with a fellow Blue. And we'd love to hear your thoughts, so leave us a review wherever you're listening. Wherever you may be, stay carefree, and remember, every little thing's gonna be all right.
Hi, it's Charlie McAvoy from the Boston Bruins.
Charlie McAvoy wins it in overtime.
Watch as we take on the Tampa Bay Lightning in the 2026 NHL Stadium Series in Tampa. Catch all the action on Sunday, February 1st on ESPN. Visit NHL.com/Stadium Series for tickets and more information. That's NHL.com/Stadium Series. See you February 1st. The NHL Stadium Series is coming to the Sunshine State.